So not all episodes have it, because we will discuss a bit the topics as we go. But today's topic, I think, is very important, and I want to say it since the beginning. So it's learn, act, flow. How skills and civil society can build a water resilient Europe. Piotr, you have anything to comment right away on this?
Well, first of all, a big thank you for inviting me. And yes, we will talk about a theme that I think cuts across really pretty much everything. I mean, education, participation, democracy, resilience. And I think one topic like that is water. I mean, it's something that touches every single one of us. And today, because I'm speaking to EVBB, I think we'll talk more on the context of water literacy, lifelong learning, and also how VT sector can come together with the aim to build a more water smart and resilient Europe, which is the title of our European Citizenship.
Indeed, it is an interesting deepening for that.
Yeah.
I mean, as we move from always technical occupations, which can have also a technical kind of a downturn as well for our education systems, but also a very important topic, I mean, for our societies and for Europe as a whole. So, yes, indeed, I mean, this topic can be very interesting for vocational education and training as we move from different technical occupations to non-formal learning. And I think today's date is also very important because just last week, as we know, it was the World Water Day. So it was an important moment and day of recollection. It was just last Saturday, in fact, that the whole also woke and celebrated this day altogether. But do you think it is something that we can afford just on a single day per year, or is something that we should work on every day of the year?
So indeed, Saturday was World Water Day. Interestingly, the day before, the Friday, was the first ever World Glaciers Day. And again, those two foci are very, very much connected as well. So it's great to have these big UN recognized events, but definitely it's not enough just to have a one-day sort of focus that you celebrate water, think about it, because I think, if I'm very, very honest, people don't think enough about the importance.
We take it for granted.
Yeah, exactly. And basically, actually, in the end of the day, it's not a substitutable resource. I mean, without it, it's done for all of us. And I think because we're living through a time of a very deep ecological stress, and it's particularly evident in young people, because we've done in Volonteurope quite a lot of research and now starting quite a lot of work on climate anxiety. So that climate anxiety does exist very specifically in the younger demographics. And so it's important as well for how do you cope with stress? Sometimes it's good to try to challenge those difficulties, but getting engaged in them. So that's why looking into projects where actually you can put your hands on and start to sort of change your thinking from stress, anxiety to more optimism, as long as there's optimism in the wider society.
As long as you feel that you are able to do something, I mean, it is, we feel more reassured. And also in the field of water and in the context of the largest climate change. But why now you think we should address this topic of water?
Yeah, because I think, I mean, so we have Europe and, in most places, you open the tap, the water runs. But there are many communities which are facing droughts, floods, pollution, biodiversity loss, but also water scarcity, which I would all brand under the issue of water injustice. And if we think EU has about 500 million citizens, 10 million Europeans, EU citizens, do not have access to regular, safe, clean drinking water, washing water and sanitation. And this is something we don't think about. I'll give you a very good example. It's in the group of our organizers of the European Citizens Initiative, we've got a representative of the French Overseas Territories of Guadeloupe. So it's so distressing when we find out about European citizens living in a French territory, I mean territories actually, because you've got Martinique, then you've got the islands in the Indian Ocean as well. And it's incredible how their life, their access to this social justice, water justice, environmental justice is so much different than your access or mine here on the continent. So there's still this very sort of almost like colonialist approach as well. So we need to change that. But of course we've got communities even on this continent, especially in the island territories. In certain communities, very often they're the more sort of underprivileged or already underprivileged communities of Europe. Women, children, girls, they are affected very often by this issue.
Different challenges overlapping.
Precisely. And why now? I think because basically, maybe 10, 20 years ago, climate crisis was like people were looking at it thinking, oh, this is a future threat. I don't think it's a future threat anymore. It's really a sort of a reality that we're living. And water, I think, is very much at the center of this crisis. And why now? Because it's not only like an environmental issue, it's related to things like health, justice, peace, democracy. And it's about the voices of those who should be heard, but very often go unheard, as we know happens in many other
social challenges.
Yeah,
Definitely. No, for sure it is not only one day, but we will come back also on the topic that you just mentioned about the DCI. It was something that we will dive in a little bit more, but on another note, because just before the World Water Day, which was on Saturday, and then on Friday there was also the first ever World Glacier Day, the previous week it was also the Civil Society Week. So it was an important moment also for organizations such as the EVBB, Volunteer Europe, to come together in Brussels, to gather, and also to learn more about the role of education, and not only, can do in let's say in civil society or in civil society actions. And indeed, do you see that, for example, EVBB as representing vet institutions can do more also in this field? It's something that can be more active, or something that in the end can also bring positive change in this field as well?
Yeah, I think the importance of these initiatives, such as, for example, you mentioned Civil Society Week, is definitely is vital, because in the time where at the moment civic space is being very constrained across Europe, and then it's starting to creep up and happen as well at the EU level. So, for example, civil society under attack from certain political groups in the European Parliament, especially it started with the environmental NGOs, right? So at times like this, it's very important to have these sort of high-level events which are done at the lead of civil society. That's definitely very important, because they're very visible, they have a brand.
Yes, the contact with the real ground, so they are able to set the agenda.
Exactly, but you mentioned that word, the contact with the ground, and that's where I think then, in terms of what can be done by the vet sector, by EVBB as well. And then look, we're doing our stuff, you're doing your things, but the important thing is that we come together. And I think there are opportunities for us to interlink as well and mutually support our campaigns. Also for the sector of non-formal education, in which I'm mostly engaged in, so active citizenship, social change making, people who create positive contributions in their societies, we can loop it into the vet sector as well. And I think when we talk about water as well, perfect examples of how awareness about water, use of water, the more sort of technical side of it as well, could be applied in the vet sector as well, and we can.
This is what we call water literacy.
Exactly.
Often we hear about the concept of digital literacy, media literacy as well, but water should be really like at the same level, or.
May I add something just about the Civil Society Week? So this is also a reflection that I have, that during the Civil Society Week we had one day was devoted specifically to the European Citizens Initiatives. And it was, again, you see, so this comes to the, on the one hand, visibility, on the other hand, the impact and effectiveness. So a big focus, big conversations, plenary sessions, presentations, World Cafe style exchanges of information from one organizer to another. By the end of that week, with an ECI, you need to reach 1 million signatures.
So tell us, what is the ECI per se?
Yeah, so the European Citizens Initiative is a tool which was established after Lisbon Treaty from the articles that basically these give a democratic power to EU citizens to propose legislative changes at EU level. I mean,
it's pretty amazing.
I'm quoting what it says in the book. Talk to somebody on the street is already sort of...
Exactly, but this is why it's a good opportunity.
Exactly. So it's to bring, let's say, like-minded organizations or individual citizens on an issue which has importance to them, and is something that lies in the competence of the European Union. And then basically this is presented to the Commissioner. They see that, yes, this lies in our competence, and these are changes that the organizers are presenting. It can be presented. Once it's approved and it's launched, there's a 1-year period to collect 1 million signatures from amongst EU citizens. It has to happen in at least 7 member states. and each member state has a minimum threshold that has to be reached as well, and it depends on the number. It's basically linked to the number of the division rule of the MEPs they have compared to the population, basically. So in smaller countries,
it's more demographic also, kind of representation of the citizens. Okay.
But coming back then to the effectiveness, so in the whole week, last week we gained 175 signatures. So, you know, a big, in 1 week, which is nothing really, and that's Brussels. So basically for me, it really just puts the point on the fact that Brussels is not enough, right? Because a week of action gaining 175 signatures it's not that great. So I think for our campaign, but for any campaign as well, and I think this applies to, you work at European level as well, but you know how important it is, your strength is the strength of your members, your partners. So that's the same for us as well. So how you evolve into the ability to speak at national, regional, and most often at the local level, because that's where the change will happen. And I guess this is something that we want to achieve, right? Is the ability of people on the ground to really feel that they're European, have a say, and that their voice is really heard, and it's not just.
What's important to say is that we have the tools. We have the European Citizens Initiative. We have these associations working in civil society. So our goal really is to go on the ground, make sure that these voices feel like they're being heard. And so on water, it can be one of the topics, but also the ECI, as you said, from the Lisbon Treaty, so it's been going, are also successful examples that we could present. And I think that as a network, us that are very wide and so on, we have also the duty to listen to these voices and to bring them to Brussels for a feedback.
Exactly.
But also make things happen eventually back once again on the ground.
Exactly.
And do you feel that we work a lot in lifelong learning?
Yes.
With Piotr, with EVBB, and also the lifelong learning platform. So we are really devoted to the upskilling of adults, to the development of competencies, and always relevant competencies for the development of, let's say, exactly adults or professionals. But do you see also a bigger role that can be played instead by youth? So not only on the lifelong perspective, but something that instead the young people can also bring more energy, for example, to these initiatives or to the issue of water.
Yeah, so one thing, obviously I mentioned a very practical, but also a very important way to address it and think of it is about anxiety. When I talked about eco-anxiety, it's a mental health issue. We know that mental health issues affect everyone, but specifically young people are much more affected. It's a demographic that's much more affected. So yes, so this is where this problem can be turned into a positive if there are platforms for engagement being offered. I also think that this education and action and young people, I think that they all come together. Because when you think about education, it's not just, and you'll know that from your work in EVBB, it's not just about transferring knowledge, right? It's about empowerment. It's about the word that I really like is agency, and it's also the ability to act. You put those three together, add knowledge into it. It's a perfect recipe, I think, to move forward in a positive sense as individuals, but also then getting together into groups of people. I think vocational education and training and lifelong learning much more broadly, they can equip people with not only skills for employment, and there's a lot of talk of employment, quite rightly, but also with the tools to understand the world, to engage as citizens, to respond to challenges such as climate change. So that comes into the little but big topic of what?
I think last week was very inspiring hearing witnesses and testimonials from young people at the Civil Society Week, so at the European Economic and Social Committee. This is from one side, but also the same side, I think that indeed providing employment opportunities to young people can resolve a part of the anxiety, while we at the same time also address societal challenges such as climate change, and one of which dimension also is of course the danger of water and water drought and shortages.
So, for example, exactly those issues that you're talking about as well, they link back to water literacy. We are just about to start a project funded by Erasmus Plus, which is called Wateracy, so water literacy. It's specifically focusing on young people through Erasmus, because it's focusing on young people, especially from marginalized communities. And it's really about hands-on activities such as co-creation activities that can raise water awareness, building more sort of emotional connections with local water bodies, and also promoting inclusive education on sustainability. And this is very much a hands-on approach to engaging young people. And if you look at the fact that young people, adults, even though some adults are still young, generally speaking, their lifespan of the young people will be slightly longer, right? So they'll be the ones who will have to live in the world that we sort of leave behind for them as well. And so I don't think these are like abstract terms, because these are terms which affect every single one of us. They affect also young people. And because of projects such as the one that we're just about to start, I think they're very much place-based, they're very participatory, and also very much grounded in local realities. So this is where that local realities, which EVBB, Volonteurope, other networks really achieve only through the fact that you've got members
that are actually schools on the ground. And for example, keep us in the loop for sure for Wateracy in case for these co-creation activities. It can be interesting for students, it can be interesting for really for anyone to give their say, to have their say on water issues and what we don't know about water or usage of water itself.
Exactly, it would be fantastic for us to do that because as part of the project we'll be organizing water assemblies in the partner countries as well. So in those countries, for example, we could definitely see how we can connect with your members in the project partner countries to bring the ed sector as well into the idea of establishing water assemblies as well and debating these topics.
I feel indeed that one of the key enabling factors to make sure that also not only the water assemblies, but all these actions that we're talking about are being effectively and implemented on the ground is partnership. So we feel that schools, associations, also schools in general, the educational systems are key actors that have this kind of agency. I also love that word actually, and can bring positive change also from us, and we are able to send and to make this message resonate a bit beyond. But who else do you think also we should work with? Who are really partners that we should engage in order to make sure that also these messages go through more strongly?
I mean I think the key is basically, I'm a great believer that basically the more people you've got together who represent different interest groups, the stronger you can be. I think the social partners are very crucial, trade unions and employers, to bring them on board as well. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's a bit more difficult as well to do that. We have sometimes very different visions and missions. But I think if you look into those sectors and you look at those stakeholders there who share very similar values that EVBB holds, my organization and others in our sectors, then I think it can only be stronger, especially when you're trying to send messages and create platforms for action about issues that are affecting us and will continue affecting all of us.
We are definitely stronger together.
Yeah.
So we really need to understand what role can be for all these organizations as not only the role, but also the responsibility for all this, because water will definitely affect not a single part of the populations, but countries as a whole, communities as a whole. Definitely. And you think that all these actors are able also to provide some input on the educational part of water literacy? So you think that this can be a part of our vocational systems or general education system as well, or non-formal learning as well in general? So what do you think this can be in terms of this relationship in between these organizations?
No, absolutely. I think this is a really good question because we've been asked this a lot as well. From educators, trainers, but also from learners alike. And I think the first answer to this would be that if you want to embed water literacy into existing vet and non-formal education provisions, I think it would be very important to treat, you said that before, to treat water literacy as a core competence and not just as a sort of optional extra. We talk about digital literacy, which is super important, but then, and it's a core competence. But then if you have water literacy as a competence, that would mean that curricula are designed in a way that connects water to real life skills. Whether you go into agriculture, tourism, construction, energy, care work, these are areas where your members are very much engaged as well. And all of them basically touch water.
It could be a sustainability competence or a real life competence, but as long as it's there, it's important, then for sure it can find its applications a little bit around every sector.
Absolutely. If you think about, let's say, people who go into the plumbing sector, into the plumbing industry as well, such a perfect opportunity to embed water literacy into plumbing training courses, right? So not just how to deal with the water delivery, distribution, broken pipes, but bring in issues of water literacy into that training as well. I mean, this is a perfect way to help create much more engaged, much more empowered citizens, basically, because it's not that people don't want to be engaged, but sometimes people need some access to platforms as well, and to be able to gain this access, but also access to knowledge. I mean, education, training, learning is absolutely key.
And then the empowerment part is for sure there. We will do it with awareness, we will do it with training, we will do it with informative sessions as well at all levels. So from youth to adult to life learning, of course, this is the perspective as well. But I like really the perspective of saying that citizens also need to have this access to platforms so that they are able to inform themselves and to know more. And of course, there will be occupations that apply such competencies, and in fact this is also the point, not only knowledge but applying such competencies also in their daily lives. So this is something that definitely will continue. And I think, as a last point, for today's podcast, because we have mentioned many different actions, so DCI, we have mentioned the Wateracy project and so on. Piotr, do you have a message where you would like our members, also our audience, to come and be engaged, and also how?
Sure. So I'm delighted that I'm being given the chance to talk about the ECI, but I think it's important to think about broader perspectives because, for example, our signature collection period ends on the 23rd of October this year. So it's not like on the 24th of October I will wake up and think, right, no more water because I'm done with it. No, it's something that will continue.
And it's not the single day.
Exactly. So it's not just about thinking about the initiative and signing it. It's, I think, what we're talking about, the idea of these partnerships, crossovers, finding mutual links is about our collective imagination, our collective empathy, and our imagination for a completely different kind of Europe that we could achieve. One which is fairer, which is bluer, greener, and much more resilient. So I think this would be my sort of message to send out as well. Bearing in mind how much focus there is at the moment on things like preparedness, security, and defense as well. So I think we need to have a bit of a sort of human positivity in the world surrounding us, which is slightly scary sometimes.
We need to work to shape it as a whole, 360 degrees through different actions, and we will do it with the different angles and so on. But it's true, it's about also giving this perspective of Europe, a whole world in general, that it's bluer, as you said, greener. So, and how do we shape it? It would be a combination of factors, but we have to have this vision.
Exactly, and I would also say that basically that concept of building bridges, it's basically this gives us the moment to strengthen the partnerships between civil society, vets, providers, but mostly about local action. And that goes back to what we were talking a bit earlier, that this local action is where things change. European collaboration is where you bring the insight and the knowledge of what happened and what worked at the local level to the sort of more meta top. And you're able to disseminate it, share good practices as well. But seriously, never forget the local level. And I think between networks like EVBB, Volonteurope, the fact that we're both members of Lifelong Learning Platform, this gives us opportunities to exchange. I mean, I'm already thinking we're currently waiting on the result of a project that looks at cyberbullying in VET. And EVBB already offered us letters of support for this as well, for the application, because of the knowledge and expertise that you have. So basically, don't go into things thinking that you know already a lot, because you don't actually. Look into other partners who might have already this type of experience or have done some inroads that you can then build and extract from to your work.
I agree. As associations or civil society organizations, we have to be grounded on the ground. And apologies for the little word twist, but really we have to be grounded in our schools, in our associations and so on, because this will give us the energy, the arguments, and also the ideas of how we will actually make it better for not only a single community, but then multiply this effect.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Piotr, for being here today with us, and hope you're most welcome also to come at the end of the ECI and also to present more of the results of the project and so on. And for any updates, be sure to share them with us.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.